you know, honestly, just more supportive. Yeah. Well, you don't take on more prisoners, so. You know, the other day, I was wearing this in the suit for about a time. He was in tennis shoes. I just goes to show you that he's really like a, he's ready to like run and push up the rope and he's on the day.
He talked to me a few years ago about those tennis shoes.
You're getting a meeting myself out of this.
Vital tennis shoes, his experience with the car. The way he's made progress in screenwriting his own is okay, based on the way that he's in the field. He's never been in the classroom. It's too long. He does what he needs to do in policy and also in executives, but he's, I think he's trained much very well. And when we were coming to a new era, the way that this everything's been and speaks a lot to that. I mean, assuming they produce for us today, that could make a question. I don't know. It's true, but I'm going to speak. We do have some information. Thank you for joining us this evening, by the way. We don't have briefing minutes for anyone this time. But then we should be running.
They said it was an education meeting?
We're garnering some information about history that's been censored. You should be able to, if there are any gaps in our knowledge, fill in some of those. If you have any questions at any point, we'll of course get to them. It should be a long meeting. At least I hope so. And it was sent to him, he's got a copy of it. That's the issue.
Did one of you write this textbook?
I was a contributor.
You wrote from memory.
I learned this history in school.
It's missing a lot.
You know everything, of course.
I'm not a machine full of every fact, but this book has hundreds of errors, chapters with entirely fabricated stories, historical events that never happened.
We published several editions of this book without complaint.
You imagined uprisings where there were democracies, presidents where there were warlords, and barbarians where history saw civilizations. You've eliminated one of the world wars and added an extra religious reformation. Surely some of you were in school when this was taught correctly.
Name an example.
World War I! It isn't here. The wars in Vietnam and Korea, the Armenian genocide, aren't mentioned. The political changes of the 1960s aren't mentioned or edited. The Civil Rights Movement, the US Civil War aren't mentioned. The marriage rights movement. Surely there are people alive today whose grandparents told them about the marriage rights movement.
You should know how the upheavals of 150 years ago were smoothed over in our texts.
I don't!
Music was a powerful force in those times, more openly and directly than at any other point in history. It led a generation against a war. Its influence shifted to artistic media, films and literature, and the focus shifted from war and racial rights to gender. We found it easier to ignore the musical movements if we erased the war and strife.
The 1960s and 1970s were a peaceful continuation of the 40s and 50s. War, once we settled the Great War in the historical record, civil rights have been taken care of for centuries. The war comes only at needed times, when as a nation we answer no. We sound the call for world justice. Wars were always won, and never changed.
It changed in the 1960s.
Not in our history.
Did you bring me here to teach you or listen to your rationalizations of the changes?
Tell us what we don't know.
The book glosses over Rome and the old British Empire. It has nothing on the Latin American revolutions.
When were they?
1800s to 1830s. And also then there were the overthrowings of the dictators in the 20th century.
I've heard of some of those.
I don't remember that.
I can see why you'd like to forget. It's exactly what you should be afraid of, isn't it? You know what happened in Chile? It's one of the first things I tell people when I set up somewhere new.
Why should it matter?
Do you know how they did it? They voted. People voted. They were all together. There was no getting around that.
And some people believe they can vote us out of office.
That's what you're telling them.
That's why we should never.
Pinochet in Chile is just one of a dozen examples. You can't expect me to
What's
know.
another example?
I give you one from your textbook, but it might as well be blank.
That's why you're here, isn't it? What else happened in Latin America that we should worry about?
That's a good question. We'll start with that. Why don't you begin with those notes?
Go ahead. Or don't you know everything?
There was Juan Perón in Argentina. There was...
Give us details. How was that one overthrown? Was he?
I can't say.
You have to. You agreed to.
What do these leaders do that fails? Write it down.
He doesn't know.
I think he does. He doesn't want us to know.
We have a deal now.
We want to keep holding public hours, right?
These sound like important details,
Yeah,
maybe
yes.
sensitive information.
Down to institutes.
You brought it up.
I need to think.
I would very much like for you to think, Enemy. Think about the history lessons which you agreed to give us, and without which you are absolutely useless. Fletcher, you can take them away for today.
Madam President, could I suggest something?
In my office, not with these visitors around. Think
I think we're expecting this off. I don't think he knows. Yes. Oh, well, I don't think he knows nothing. I just don't think what he knows is very relevant to us. I think he's been inflating his usefulness this entire time. I think he doesn't want to die.
I'm gonna be with Fletcher. I have to.
Hey, everybody.
Aye. Wonderful.
I was writing down, oh, that is too silly flash. And then when I didn't know where